search engines are basically the nervous system that they drive traffic through the internet, through the collective mind of humanity. If you have control of a search engine or the main search engines, you really have control over the thought process of the collective mind. In the past, the media served a lot of this function, but nowadays it's more the internet. So to me, it's a fascinating and really important topic. How do search engines operate? How have they changed over the years to drive people to certain types of sites? So originally Google worked so well, in my opinion, because they did a few key things that were fairly new. They gave in my opinion, overwhelming credit in their algorithm to how long people stayed on a certain website, because you're going to stay on a website that's a more interesting, better website. They also gave a lot of credit to backlinks, and they had some human curation where humans go in and look and see which websites should be upgraded and downgraded. But it was really that key component, I believe, of backlinks and testing how long people stay on websites. That's going to get you the best information. So how did Google change in order to start driving traffic away from new good information into establishment type websites? In my opinion, the number one thing they did is they started giving a lot of credit. Well, first of all, they removed those other items gradually from their algorithm, and they started giving overwhelming credit to the amount of new content that you put on your website, or your YouTube channel for that matter. So you had to constantly put up new content, be changing the content on your website, otherwise you'd get downgraded. Now, large, wealthy corporations, people with a lot of money behind them to push a certain message, they have money to constantly upgrade websites. Other people don't. And also, when you churn a lot of content, you tend to dilute the good content. It's harder to find the truth quickly when it's diluted out with a bunch of other content that someone might not be as knowledgeable about. Another big change in the Google algorithm is that they now seem to care a lot about how much traffic a website has, because the biggest establishment websites are always going to have the most traffic. And so therefore they give more credit in the algorithm to whether your site has a lot of traffic. Again, squeezing out the small alternative viewpoint. And as probably everyone is aware now, Google does a lot of direct censorship, which they didn't do in the very beginning. Now they do the same thing that the media does. They will censor anyone who's outside the mainstream and has actionable items, really gets to the heart of issues. And then they will promote voices who are supposedly outside the mainstream, but really just argue about nonsensical, divisive issues. Same thing the media has always done. There are a lot of alternative search engines out there, and they're all copying Google. In fact, they're generally just ranking websites by how much traffic the website has. Well, the website's going to have traffic because Google drives traffic. At this point, for the last couple of years, any anti-establishment platform is going to be taken down or co-opted. Even regardless of all this censorship, I do still believe that people are learning an amazing amount. You're seeing consensus form in the correct directions. People are so much more knowledgeable now about health than when I was in my 20s. In my 20s, all anybody knew was don't eat fat, because there was no internet. There was only the media telling you don't eat fat because the sugar industry was paying them to say that. Same thing about the banking industry. This information just simply wasn't out there. And no matter how much you censor, the truth will still gradually come out. I think part of the reason that there is such a desperation on the part of politicians and oligarchs nowadays, and you see some of these things that never happened before, is that you've got so much more information out there. People are making changes, at least a percentage of people. People can have a much better life now, I believe, than they could have just 20 years ago if you avail yourself of the knowledge which is out there. But unfortunately, it is a much less efficient process when you're constantly directed in the wrong path. As I said, the internet is the collective mind of humanity, and search engines are the nervous system. And it's really important to seek information carefully, to realize that a lot of what you get is, even if it's kind of in tune with what you want, it's something that's still been put there to kind of distract you and redirect you. And people are getting a lot more sophisticated about this. So I still have hope, but it is unfortunate that the software industry takes forever to do the obvious. A lot of what drives people to find correct information is just kind of the values that they're attached to. When you think about your own mind, it's made up of billions and billions of nerve cells, each an individual entity. And collective thoughts percolate up through networks of just countless nerve cells. And it's kind of the same way that things work in the collective consciousness of humanity. And depending on what you're attached to, that's the thought process that you're going to be learning from and also adding to. It's what you're dedicated to. If you're dedicated to truth, you're going to not only follow certain paths, but you're going to add to the strength of that path. And if you're dedicated to fearfulness or anger or hatred, you're going to follow different paths. A lot of the people that are involved in bad things in society, I really don't know that they're fully conscious themselves. They're just part of a collective mind. They're collectively creating something that is evil, but each is only playing a small part. A lot of it works on a subconscious level, I believe. The most important thing is just what you're dedicated to understand what you're dedicated to, and to stay dedicated to the right things, to be dedicated to the truth, to helping others. That's going to put you into a collective mind that is going to take you in a better direction and take society in a better direction. Whereas most people are kind of unconscious and they let negative emotions drive them, and they get caught up in collective minds that are effectively evil to varying degrees. And they promote evil things without even realizing it. Just as many religions have countless gods, you could almost think of each thought process as a god. And if you give yourself to that collective consciousness of a negative thought process, you're kind of worshiping the wrong god. A video idea I had been planning to make, and since I probably won't craft a careful video, I'll just throw it out here as well, since it's kind of in the same vein. The singularity and AI that everybody's been talking about. If you've ever watched my old videos, you know I don't believe that machines will ever become conscious. I believe that consciousness and matter are two entirely separate things. The word singularity is a great word for this. Singularity doesn't mean that machines became conscious one day. Singularity means a single point. And I think what the real danger is here, and what people unconsciously are afraid of without realizing it, is not that machines are going to become conscious, not that the internet is going to become conscious, but that control is going to rest at a single point. And we're moving in that direction, and it's a very scary direction, because if the machines became conscious, maybe there'd be a 50-50 chance they'd be good or bad. As a general rule, if you're obsessed with power, there's something wrong there. And yet, unfortunately, those are the people that do rise to power the most. And you probably see this in the world. When control reaches closer and closer to singularity, you get more and more control at these singular top points that are run by the worst people. And that's really dangerous. The great thing about the internet was it was a collective consciousness, and information traveled kind of diffusely at first. It kind of routed around the old systems of control, the media and the big publishing houses. And anyone could go out there and share information. But unfortunately now we're reaching more and more where fewer and fewer people control the internet. Platforms have been taken down or taken over. Search engines are completely manipulated. Singularity is the real danger here. The danger that ultimately maybe one or two people could, or one person could be controlling all information and all technology for that matter. Now, there are also good aspects of technology. The printing press enabled a diffusion of information, and it tore down a lot of the corruption in society. The internet enabled a much greater diffusion of information and tore down even more corruption in society. But the other part of that technology trend is that as technology becomes more advanced, the methods of consolidating power become more advanced. And some types of technology, like the telegraph or the telephone, can enable a dictator to consolidate power, and even the internet to a degree. When you can get control over all of the main portals to the internet, or all of the main platforms of the internet, as is unfortunately happening now, then you can get immense corruption, immense consolidation of power. It seems like nobody has pointed out that the danger is not the machines becoming conscious. The danger is power consolidating to a singular point that is controlled by a human that's obsessed with power. So those are my rambling thoughts on those topics. I'm sorry the video wasn't better crafted. I guess also part of the reason I didn't do this video in the past was I don't really have a solution for a lot of these issues. And I always like to, instead of just pointing out problems, actually have a solution. My only general thoughts on a solution are ultimately you are a lot more susceptible to the problems when you're worshiping the wrong thing. When you're clear as to what your ideals are and the direction that you want to go in, and you're going in the positive direction, then even though there's a lot of censorship, there's a lot of control, you'll be the one that overcomes that. You'll be better off than the people who don't overcome that. And we're entering a time where there's a lot of turmoil, a lot of change rapidly, because these technologies, so many different technologies have enabled so many changes, some extremely positive, such as the sharing of new knowledge or suppressed knowledge, and others extremely negative, such as the ability for smaller and smaller groups of people to do more and more damage, to control more and more people, and to use technology against people. But it ultimately just comes down to knowing what you're worshiping, which direction you want to go in, and you will tend to go in the right direction.